then introduce our speakers. Matt Garrett from Connecticut University is serving as moderator for this panel, and I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Okay, great. I've been told the mic is only for as a prop. So tell me if you can hear me, let me know, or any of us for that matter. Nice to see everybody. I'm Matthew Garrett. I'm here as a Wesleyan AUP member and one of the founding members of the Wesleyan XC. So very briefly, let me just introduce our panelists. Bethany Letiecq is professor of research methodology in the College of Education and Human Development at George Mason University. She's co-founder of the Anti-Racist and Decolonizing Research Collaborative and conducts community-based participatory action research in partnership with Central American immigrant families in Virginia and Maryland. She's president of the National Council on Family Relations, president of the GMU chapter of the AAUP, and vice president of the AUP Local 6741 of the AFT. Rotua Lumbantobing is a professor of economics at Western Connecticut State University. She is vice president of the National AAUP since June of 24. Prior to that, Rotua served as president of the Western Connecticut State University AAUP chapter for 4 years. She is a sports columnist, and she's working on a book that historicizes the dominance of the U.S. women's national soccer team and locates the sport within the broader economic questions concerning race, class, and gender. And finally, Russ Newman is associate professor of digital media and culture at Emerson College, Boston, and a faculty associate at Harvard University's Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society. His work explores the intersections of the political economy of communication, neoliberalism, the epistemological foundations of media policymaking, commercial and governmental surveillance, and activism surrounding communications policy. He served as president of Emerson's collective bargaining chapter of the AAUP AFT from 2020 to 2024, during which he led the negotiation of the union's strongest new contract in over a decade. He continues to serve on the union's governing council, and he also serves as both co-coordinator and treasurer of the Union for Democratic Communications, a 40-year-old organization of communication researchers, journalists, media producers, policy academics, and media activists. And I think one thing that we're aiming to do here is talk across different kinds of chapters, from advocacy chapters to collective bargaining units, and see how we can be sort of operating together. I'm sorry, I can't see you. I'll turn it over to the panel now. Sure.
Okay, so my name is Rotua Lumbantobing, and I am a member of the Connecticut State University AAUP chapter. So I just want to make sure that I did this right. So the CSE AAUP started in 1975, and we first negotiated our contract in 1976, and it was ratified on April 1st, 1937. So we have been a collective bargaining unit for a while. And I think it's part of the Connecticut state constitution that we all public sector workers, except for certain categories, need to be in collective bargaining units. So that's so I'm the vice president of AAP National also, and there are, I think, 83 chapters of collective bargaining chapters in AAUP, and about more than 400 chapters, what we call advocacy chapters. Let me just say this right away. I am not a fan of the name advocacy because it is passive, and I want us to be active, right? We need to be active, especially in this moment. So I will turn it over first, to Russ, because each of us comes from actually a chapter that is different from all among the three of us. Go ahead.
Oh, sure. Good morning, everyone, and thanks very much to the Connecticut conference for hosting me, and I'm really glad to be talking to the folks in this room today. So I'm one of those folks. I'm a political economist by training. And I'm one of those folks that teaches courses that are titled things like "It's not paranoia if they're really after you," political economy surveillance, right? Uh, my background before coming back to the academy was in media organizing and activism. I was a research and campaign director for a national nonprofit called Free Press, who's one of the co-founders sadly passed away last week. So Robert McChesney was a treasured mentor and friend. Uh, so my own chapter. So at Emerson College, we are one of those private colleges that does maintain a collective bargaining chapter, a collective bargaining unit. And in fact, we negotiated the strongest contract we've done in over 10 years at the conclusion of the academic year of 2024. So the three things I'll just talk about briefly to get ideas on the table, and then we'll open things up. One, it can be done, although what was heard at the end of the last panel is certainly true. We exist in the form we are now because it's an act of continual reconstruction and reconstruction and reconstruction. We're approximately 83% full dues paying members of our faculty. Our faculty is about 240 members strong. Our adjunct faculty is also unionized as part of AAUP AFT, and our staff is unionized as part of SEIU. So I think we have a couple advantages at Emerson College. One of the, even in this environment, the fact that we're not exactly a huge recipient of government grants, unlike our neighbors up the river at Harvard and MIT, there's a little bit of shielding that we have. So thing one, it can be done. Second, I find myself rethinking the moment, both in the terms we just discussed in the keynote, but also in terms of emergent ensembles or assemblages that we need to think about at a moment where our struggles are compounded in a number of ways that we can talk about. One of which is a very deliberate legitimation crisis surrounding our area, the idea of higher education itself. And then I'll wind down with just a couple ideas, a couple concerns about suspected traps that I fear even elements of organizing at my own campus might occasionally fall into, but we're in that different moment. So, to back up to what our contract was about over the last year, we won some significant things. So at the conclusion of last academic year, we were able to get the college to commit to a 13% increase in salary spend over the course of the life of the contract. At the lower end of our pay scales, we saw salaries of assistant professors who were coming in rise by as much as 18 or 19% themselves. We also were able to obtain flat rate bonuses for everyone for year 2 and year 3 of the contract, right? Which wouldn't be added to salary that goes on to COLA, but at least would be boosts, which was a compromise between a number of things we were working on. We devised a real innovation, a living grid. And what we mean by that is we have a baseline grid by which new hires would be placed, but every year the grid itself grows by a certain amount. So one of the problems you face over a 5-year contract, folks who come in on year 1 are getting a better deal than the folks who come in at year 5 because you have this, inflation's a thing, as we're all feeling. So the living grid grows by a set of rules that operates alongside annual COLA adjustments. Non-tenured faculty and tenure line faculty were treated differently in terms of benefits. That difference is now eliminated. Everyone receives the same benefits. We even opened up a brief door for term faculty who were not tenure line to become tenure line. It was a one-time deal. Part of it was particular to our own background and history in that a promise had been made by a previous president of the college, and folks have long memories when they hear this kind of thing. So it was a benefit to the administration for this particular, thorn in its side to go away. We doubled our transit subsidy for Boston. That's significant. A lot of us are coming from far outside the city. As anyone who's tried to purchase a box inside the 95 corridor might know. And we have a number of sidebars on basic questions of workload as well as implications of online instruction that were starting to become issues, and we're going to be commencing those negotiations over the summer. But the college committed in our collective bargaining agreement to discuss these things. So, it absolutely can be done. there's also, this happened at the end of 2024, and obviously in the last year, much has changed. And part of the oddity of our moment, and this is part of a conversation that we had last evening, we're facing a number of things, and a lot of these things came out in the last talk. One, we've all been facing the crisis that is neoliberalism for a long time, which needs to be seen as a political project that's taken the better part of the last century. It's a deliberate effort to redesign governance such that the way to accomplish particular goals is to force you into a market setting. It's not just about commodification, it's about thinking through governance. And we've been struggling against this for decades, but now this has been compounded not just by that struggle, but by what is a right-wing answer against neoliberalism itself. I find the work of Melinda Cooper, who wrote a book called Family Values, has done a variety of things since. She's in Australia, to think through this nascent combination of paleoconservatism, which sees the reinstitution of hierarchies as right and just and the way forward and an answer to the contradictions that neoliberalism has wrought, alongside a techno-libertarian extreme, which we're witnessing in the form of Elon Musk. And anyone, if we're suggesting things to follow, if you aren't following the nerdreich.com, you should be, right? This is reporting about the visions of big tech and more, which are all about, not just profits, but ideas about governance, right? And we're even seeing, a good post by Cory Doctorow yesterday makes the argument. A lot of the things that are being decided right now are decidedly not good for capitalists, right? What is happening is a deliberate erosion of all those institutions we have available to us that produce the trust that is necessary for systems to operate. And that's exactly the pain point that I'm feeling. I'm sure you're feeling it too with AI in your classrooms. One of the worst things about AI is I barely trust my students' work anymore because I've seen enough of them engage in ChatGPT essay writing that trust itself, which is a foundational piece of how education should work, is itself even being torn apart. So even as we need to organize everywhere, I find myself thinking about how we need to organize across, not just higher ed, but in other settings. I'll just react to the title of our panel, and then I'll hand things over. The title of our panel is about learning from, collective bargaining chapters, learning from advocacy, or a better word, chapter, and beyond. I think of it more about learning about, because each kind of chapter has particular capabilities and tools in its tool bag that are also variated by whether you're at a public university or a private one. There are certain things that that advocacy, or a more active word that we will find, organizing chapters can do. You can take much stronger stances on political issues of the day because you represent the folks who have self-selected into your organization. As the president of a collective bargaining chapter, part of the law, labor law is you represent everyone. And as I'm sure many of you have found on your own campuses, discussions about war, peace, and beyond are absolute rending points, between, our union brothers and sisters on our campuses. So I'll leave the discussion with this. My fear about some traps. The traditional model on our campus, when we were negotiating our contract, it's traditionally, the worker versus administration, except we're now in a moment in which somehow we need to build an infrastructure such that our administrations maintain a strong spine to stand up to the existential challenge, to the trust in higher education itself across the U.S., which is going to require us to think weird about how we construct these things, and also to be wary of the ways that the political right has appropriated all the tools we've had in our toolbox. The idea of civil rights, we've all felt it. In 2 months flat, all of a sudden, to do the things, these tools that were designed to try to rectify past justice wrongs have now been turned on their head. And if you're trying to rectify historical inequities, now all of a sudden you are subject to breaking this thing we call civil rights. And likewise on our campuses, these are being mobilized to create strife on our campuses. And I worry that in some of the organizing that is happening, there is infiltration going on because folks trust Instagram too much, particularly my students, right? I think we're getting back to a point where we have to grow new networks of genuine trust with each other. And that's going to involve a lot more basic level, person to person organizing, not just across our colleges, not just across the types of units we have available on our campus, but across other sectors, because one of the things the American public won't do is stand up. This is a great conversation too. It happened right before we got started. Why would a broader public that can't afford what we offer stand up and say, we stand with you in the numbers we need them to? Growing that trust is a real problem we face, and soon. So with that, things on the table. Let me toss this over, and I look forward to the discussion to come.
All right. That was. I'm going to say that was a good setup. For me. I don't. Do I need to talk into this a little bit? Yeah. Well, thank you, and it's just so nice to be here and to be in community with you all and to be forging solidarities across the country. Really, as you're saying, we really need to think big here. How many of you are advocacy chapters? Woo woo. Okay. My people. All right. So I'm the advocacy wing, and yes, we are talking about changing that name, right? Maybe just to a local, or maybe organizing. Maybe we can crowdsource that a little bit here. That would be fun. Um, I When I came to George Mason University in 2013. There was an AAUP chapter there, founded in the 70s, and when I started going to this meeting, no offense, but it was sort of like the old guard talking, like kind of whining about how bad things were, but people not really wanting to do a thing, and we called it the Wine and Wine Club. Um, but then George Mason, some of you may know, we like to call it Coke U, because they were receiving so much Coke money, that and we're the largest beneficiary of Charles Koch, over $180 million at this point, where we are captured. We like to say, at least some of our subunits are captured, like the law school and the econ department, completely captured by libertarian zealots. But no, and so they wanted to change the law school to Scalia law. And some of you know the name because they rolled it out as the Antonin Scalia School of Law, and or something like that, and it was like it was abbreviated to ASSLE, right? It was like, I was like, all that money, and they didn't think about the branding. So now it's something else. I don't know what it is now, but the faculty senate at the time tried to push back against that, and I'm already talking too long here. So the faculty tried to push back through the faculty senate, and we were just rolled over and laughed at. And we realized, wow, we have zero power on this campus at all. And that's when we revitalized the AAUP chapter and really started moving from a chapter that was intellectualizing the problem, which we like to do, to actually mobilizing and organizing and trying to build an organizing a musculature that we're still working on. And we've been talking a lot in my circles that, man, we have a lot of flaccid muscles that we really need to pump up, right? Because and for many of us, we just haven't been on the front lines. We haven't been called up and some of these other spaces. So anyway, so it's been a journey. It's been a journey to grow this chapter. We are small. Mason has some, I don't know, I should know this, some 1,600 faculty, and our advocacy chapter, the biggest we've gotten is about 125. So we're really small, but we don't act like we're small. we act like we're big, and in fact, we act like a union. And I think that's really important. And the next thing I'm going to talk about is Local 6741. But we're really wanting to re-socialize that. Listen, what is a union? A union is an idea. It's an idea, and you can be a union. Why do you need to not be a union? Like, why does the advocacy chapter need to be called an advocacy chapter? Why don't we just call it the union? And why don't we just create our own narrative? I mean, the fascists are creating narratives, and we're defending against those narratives, which really isn't a great play, right? To constantly be on the defensive. We were listening to Tim Snyder and Jason Stanley, these, authors of fascism and authoritarianism, and they were saying, you know, we got to step outside of that narrative and write our own narrative. And our own narrative is, let's not even act like a union. Let's be the union. We can have pre-majority unionism take hold here, where you can negotiate with senior leadership. How do you get to that table? Well, at George Mason, you know, we have had a adversarial relationship with the administration. The AUP chapter is seen as sort of like they're just the activists and pain in the ass, right? Um, and so for a long time they were sort of ignoring us until we started making friends with journalists. And we recognize early on that they hate when we write op-eds and when we write about their inconsistencies between the Mason way, right, and then what they're doing in their in the back rooms to privatize everything, right, away from the public good, and to the private to the private. So, um, so I think learning from labor organizing, learning from community organizing, and truly, I do want to give a shout out to the human rights community that trained me many years ago in organizing and fighting. Um, but also the work that I do right now with, particularly with Central American families, many of who are undocumented in the DMV area. And I mean, if you ever want to be inspired, go to an organizing meeting with CASA or one of these groups where people are fighting for their lives, they're fighting for their families. And here I am, like nervous about speaking up at a faculty meeting. Perfect. And I have to constantly hold the hands of my comrades in the community and say, Jesus, if little Maria from Guatemala can stand up to the management company that's looking to evict her from a shithole apartment complex, and she's standing up and fighting back, my God, please tell me I have some capacity to be like Maria. Um, so anyway, I'm so we're looking to organize, and I'll just say one more quick thing about my role not only on George Mason's campus and how we're trying to act like a union, um, but a couple years ago, when the AAUP affiliated with the AFT. Some you probably know the story already. You said AAUP affiliated with the AFT, and here are all these advocacy chapters. And what does the AFT do with all these advocacy chapters? So you all know, right? They stuck us all in one local called Local 6741. And the first round, the local went to the convention of AFT and voted as delegates or whatever. The AUP, before you, and the AFT thought, oh, they'll just come in as, these delegates to the conference and they'll leave. Well, a couple of really smart people called me and some other people up and said, hey, there's 11,000 people that they just stuck in a local, in a national local, and they think we're just going to show up every 2 years as a delegate and vote on the floor of the AFT convention. And they're like, we can do so much more than that. So we ran the Common Good slate, and we killed it. We killed it in the election. Like 1,300 of the 11,000 voted. Thank you very much. And because we're new, right? But we've organized, and what's exciting is that we went to AFT and we went to AAUP and we said, oh, no, we're not a one-time thing. We're actually going to build a new structure to rep the advocacy chapter locals, which the AAUP, quite frankly, have been sort of neglecting forever, which fair enough. There's a lot going on. And no total shade there, but I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be saying this out loud right now. But but we showed up and we said we want to do more, and we think we can, and we think we're leaving so much on the table by not organizing and not growing the capacity of these pre-majority unions, because I'm in a right to work state, and until we get the enabling legislation, like, what are we supposed to do? Like, just cower, what's been wonderful is that the AUP and the AFT have really embraced this new structure. They are working so hard with us to figure out how to build a structure and build our capacity to really begin to organize and do good work, to try to grow our power, bottom up and top down. And we talk a lot about bottom up, but sometimes you need leadership at the top to also support the growth up from the bottom, right? And so we're trying to bring some resources together, and I'm happy to share way more about about all the activities, from the Skills to Win stuff and the Organize Every Campus that is happening. But I think I feel like I've been talking for a long time, so I will pass it back to wherever we're going next.
Can I just say something about our advocacy? Yeah, I hate the name too. Chapters that you said, Bethany, 3 years ago. Yeah, it's about when the AUP AFT affiliation agreement was approved at the biennial meeting. That local 6741 had about 11,000 members. And while together all the advocacy chapters, while the collective bargaining chapters, even though there are only 83 chapters, but it's the majority, it's about 33,000 members. So the advocacy chapters, local 6741, have gained right now 2,400 members. Yay, new members. Woo-hoo. Talk about that what they say, that a bad boss is the best organizer. Yes, Trump is the best organizer. So we're growing, and we're going to even focus even more on our chapters, all our chapters, not just collective bargaining, but advocacy chapters.
You heard it here.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah.
hold everybody accountable to each other, right?
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Top to top. Yes.
You all have been on.
Yes.
So we should take a break for lunch and keep conversation going. Thank you all.